We'd like you out by the end of the week. This house was our son's, not yours. You were just his wife." Those words cut deeper than the grief I was already drowning in. I was 28 years old, still wearing my pajamas at 2 in the afternoon, and my mother-in-law was standing in my bedroom doorway 2 weeks after burying my husband, delivering what she thought was my eviction notice. I didn't cry, at least not from what she said. I didn't scream. I just looked at her with the composure Daniel had always admired in me and said, "I respect your feelings." Before we dive into the story, I have a quick favor to ask. Drop a comment below and let me know where you're watching from. I love seeing how far our stories reach. And if this is your first time here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. We drop new videos every single day. Now, let's get back to the story. My name is Violet, and this story begins in the summer of 2019 when I met Daniel Matthews in Denver, Colorado. I was 25, working as a marketing coordinator for an insurance company, and he was 29, a freelance software engineer with the kindest eyes I'd ever seen. We met at a coffee shop in the Cherry Creek area. I know, cliché, but sometimes the best love stories are. Daniel was everything I'd ever wanted in a partner. He was thoughtful, funny, and had this way of making me feel like I was the most important person in the room. We moved in together after 8 months, and by 2021, we were married in a small ceremony in Boulder. His family attended, but I could tell from the beginning that his mother, Patricia, 56, wasn't thrilled about losing her precious son to some girl she barely knew. Patricia Matthews was one of those women who believed no one would ever be good enough for her children. She'd raised Daniel and his younger sister Ashley, now 26, as a single mother after her husband Robert, 59, had walked out when the kids were young. Robert had come back into their lives when Daniel was in college, and they'd reconciled, but Patricia never forgot who had been there through the hard times. She saw herself as the ultimate protector of her family, and I was clearly an outsider threatening that dynamic. My own family couldn't have been more different. My father, Mike, 62, was a retired electrician from Fort Collins who'd raised me and my older sister Rosemary, 31, with quiet strength after our mother died when I was 15. Rosemary worked as a nurse in Phoenix, and though we only saw each other a few times a year, we were incredibly close. Dad had this way of cutting through nonsense with practical wisdom, and Rosemary had inherited his protective instincts, especially when it came to me. When Daniel and I decided to buy a house together in 2022, we found the perfect place in Lakewood, a 3-bedroom ranch with a big backyard and a 2-car garage. The asking price was $320,000, and we'd saved enough for a decent down payment. But here's where things got complicated. Daniel's credit wasn't great. He'd made some mistakes in his early 20s with credit cards and a car loan that went south, and while he'd been working to repair it, his score was still hovering around 580. My credit, on the other hand, was pristine. I'd been obsessive about paying everything on time since I got my first credit card at 18, and my score was 780. Our mortgage broker was straightforward about it. We'd get a much better interest rate if the loan was in my name only. Daniel was fine with this arrangement, but when we told his family about our house hunting plans, Patricia immediately had opinions. "I think Daniel should be on the deed," she said over dinner at their house in Thornton. "It's important for a man to have his name on his home." "Mom, it doesn't matter whose name is on what," Daniel replied. "We're married. What's mine is hers and what's hers is mine." "That's not how the law works, honey," Patricia insisted. "If something happens to Violet, you could lose everything." I remember feeling my cheeks burn with embarrassment. "Mrs. Matthews, I'm not going anywhere. And honestly, if something happened to me, I'd want Daniel to have the house anyway." So that's what we did. The house went into my name only. The mortgage was in my name only. I made all the payments from my checking account, though Daniel contributed to household expenses and helped with maintenance. Legally, the house was 100% mine, but emotionally, it was ours. We lived there for 2 happy years. Daniel later got a job as senior engineer in a mid-sized tech company, and we started talking about kids. We painted the spare bedroom yellow, thinking it might become a nursery someday. We planted a vegetable garden in the backyard and adopted a golden retriever named Buddy from the Denver Animal Shelter. My relationship with Daniel's family remained cordial but distant. Patricia never stopped treating me like I was temporary, making little comments about how I was too career-focused or how I didn't understand family traditions. Robert mostly stayed quiet, but I could tell he agreed with whatever Patricia said. Ashley was different. She genuinely seemed to like me, and we'd started developing our own friendship separate from the family dynamics. My dad and Rosemary, on the other hand, adored Daniel. Dad appreciated his work ethic and his kindness to me, and Rosemary loved how he could make me laugh even during my worst days. "He's good people," Dad would say, which was about the highest compliment he gave anyone. Everything changed on March 15th, 2024. Daniel was at work when he collapsed at his desk. A coworker called 911, but by the time the paramedics arrived, he was gone. Brain aneurysm. No warning signs, no previous symptoms. The doctor said it was like a time bomb that had been ticking his whole life, and there was nothing anyone could have done. I was at my office when I got the call. I remember thinking there had to be some mistake, that maybe he'd just fainted or had a panic attack. But when I got to the hospital and saw the expression on the doctor's face, I knew. At 28 years old, I was a widow. The funeral was a blur of casseroles and condolences. Patricia took charge of the arrangements, which was fine by me. I could barely function. She chose the music, the flowers, the readings. I sat in the front row of the church, holding Rosemary's hand, while Patricia delivered a eulogy about her son, her baby, her heart. Dad flew in from Fort Collins, and Rosemary took a week off work to stay with me. They were worried about me being alone in the house, but I insisted I needed the space to grieve. What I didn't expect was that Daniel's family would interpret my need for solitude as an invitation to move in. 2 days after the funeral, Patricia and Robert showed up at my door with suitcases. "We thought we'd stay for a while," Patricia said. "Help you get through this difficult time." I should have said no. I should have told them I appreciated the offer but needed to process my grief privately. But I was exhausted and broken, and having people in the house meant I didn't have to face the silence alone. For the first few days, they were helpful. Patricia cooked meals and did laundry. Robert fixed a leaky faucet and cleaned the gutters. But I started noticing little things. They'd rearranged the living room furniture. Patricia had packed away some of Daniel's things to make it easier for you to move forward. They were treating the house like it was theirs, and I was the guest. The first real confrontation came 10 days after the funeral. I was sitting at the kitchen table, going through sympathy cards, when Patricia sat down across from me with a cup of coffee and a serious expression. "Violet, we need to talk about your future," she said. I looked up from the cards, confused. "What do you mean?" "Well, honey, you're young. You're going to want to start over eventually. Maybe move somewhere with better job opportunities or closer to your family." "I like my job," I said slowly. "And this is my home." Patricia's smile was patronizing. "But sweetie, it's such a big house for just one person. And honestly, it must be painful being surrounded by all these memories." "The memories are what I have left of him," I replied. "I'm not ready to let go of them." "Of course not right now," she said quickly. "But eventually. And when that time comes, we'd like to buy the house from you. Keep it in the family, you know." I stared at her. "Buy it from me?" "Well, we'd pay you fairly for whatever equity you have in it. But the house really should stay with Daniel's family. It's where he lived, where he was happy. It's part of his legacy." Something cold settled in my stomach. "Patricia, this house was never Daniel's. It's in my name only. The mortgage is in my name only. I pay all the bills." Her expression hardened. "That may be true on paper, but morally it was his home too. He lived here. He contributed to it. He contributed to household expenses," I said carefully. "But he never had any legal ownership of the property." "That's a technicality," Robert spoke up from the doorway. I hadn't realized he was listening. "Daniel was your husband. In a real marriage, everything belongs to both spouses." I felt my temper rising, but I kept my voice level. "In Colorado, we're not a community property state. The house is mine, period." Patricia's mask slipped completely. "How can you be so cold about this? We're not asking for charity. We're asking for what's right." "What's right is respecting the legal ownership of property," I said, standing up. "And what's right is not pressuring a grieving widow to give up her home." The room fell silent. Then Patricia said, "I think you need some time to think about this. We'll give you space to consider what Daniel would have wanted." But she didn't give me space. Over the next few days, the pressure intensified. Patricia would make comments about how empty the house felt, how much it must cost to maintain, how I clearly couldn't handle all this responsibility alone. Robert started talking about property taxes and maintenance costs, suggesting I couldn't afford to keep the house long-term. They stopped helping with household chores and started treating me like I was the intruder. They'd have family conversations in the living room and stop talking when I entered. They'd make plans for dinner without including me, then act surprised when I asked what was going on. Rosemary called every day, and I started telling her about the weird tension in the house. "Something's not right," she said. "They're up to something." "I think they want me to sell them the house," I admitted. "Over my dead body," Rosemary said fiercely. "Violet, that house is yours. Daniel made sure of that. Don't let them manipulate you into giving up your security." But the manipulation was subtle and constant. Patricia would sigh dramatically while looking at wedding photos. "It's just so hard, being in the place where he was happiest, knowing he's never coming back." Robert would comment on utility bills or maintenance needs. "This is a lot of house for one person. A lot of responsibility." The breaking point came exactly 2 weeks after the funeral. I was in my bedroom, trying to work up the courage to start going through Daniel's clothes, when Patricia knocked on the door. "Violet, we need to talk." I opened the door to find both Patricia and Robert standing in the hallway, looking like they were about to deliver bad news. "What's wrong?" I asked. Patricia took a deep breath. "We've been talking and we think it's time." "Time for what?" "Time for you to move on. We'd like you out by the end of the week." I stared at them. "Excuse me." "This house was our son's," Patricia said, her voice firm. "Not yours. You were just his wife. Now that he's gone, it should come back to his family." "You can't be serious," I said. "We're completely serious," Robert said. "We've been patient, but this needs to happen. We'll help you pack, of course. And we'll give you a week to find a new place." "A week?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You're giving me a week to leave my own house?" "It's not your house," Patricia said coldly. "It was Daniel's house. He lived here. He made it a home. Just because some paperwork has your name on it doesn't make it morally yours." The room spun around me. I gripped the doorframe to steady myself. "You're trying to steal my house." "We're trying to preserve our son's memory," Patricia said. "And honestly, you staying here is just pathetic. You're clinging to something that was never really yours." That's when something inside me snapped. Not into anger, into clarity. I looked at these people who had been living in my house, eating my food, using my utilities, and now trying to claim my property, and I realized Daniel had been right to protect me. He'd seen this coming. "I respect your feelings," I said calmly. "I'll start packing right away." They looked surprised by my compliance. "Good," Patricia said. "We appreciate you being reasonable about this." I smiled. "Of course. I'll just need to make a few phone calls first." The first call I made was to Rosemary. "You need to get here now," I said. "What's wrong?" she asked. "They're trying to steal my house." "What? Are you kidding me?" I wish I was. "They just told me I have a week to get out because the house morally belongs to them." There was a long pause. Then Rosemary said, "I'm booking a flight right now. And Violet, don't you dare let them intimidate you. That house is yours." The second call was to my lawyer, Patrick Bezos, who'd handled the house purchase. "Patrick, I need to know exactly what my rights are regarding my property." "What's going on, Violet?" he asked. I explained the situation, and I could hear him getting angry on my behalf. "Violet, they have absolutely no legal claim to your house. None. Zero. The property is in your name only. The mortgage is in your name only. Daniel had no ownership interest in the property at all. He was okay with the arrangement. They're saying it's morally his because he lived here." "Morally doesn't mean legally," Patrick said firmly. "If they don't leave when you ask them to, they're trespassing. Would you like me to draft a formal eviction notice?" "Yes," I said without hesitation. "I want them out. I'll have it ready by tomorrow morning." The third call was to Dad. "Hi, sweetheart," he said. "How are you holding up?" "Not great, Dad. Daniel's parents are trying to force me out of my house." Dad was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "They're testing you, Violet. They think you're weak because you're grieving, but you're not weak. You're a fighter just like your mother was, and you don't back down from bullies." "I'm scared, Dad." "I know you are. But you've got more backbone than all of them combined. And you've got me and Rosemary. We're not going to let anyone take advantage of you. Can you come? I know it's a lot to ask, but I'm already packing, Dad said. I'll be there tomorrow morning. That night, I barely slept. I could hear Patricia and Robert talking in the guest room, probably planning how they'd redecorate once I was gone. But I wasn't going anywhere. This was my house, my sanctuary, my connection to Daniel, and I was going to fight for it. Rosemary arrived the next morning, and Dad pulled up an hour later. Patricia and Robert were in the kitchen when my family walked in, and the tension was immediate. "Violet," Patricia said sweetly, "you didn't mention you were having visitors." "These aren't visitors," I said. "This is my family, and they're here because of what you're trying to do to me." Dad shook their hands politely, but I could see the assessment in his eyes. Rosemary was less diplomatic. "Again, I'm sorry for your loss," she said, "but I understand you're putting pressure on my sister to leave her own home." Patricia's smile faltered. "I wouldn't call it pressure. We're just trying to help her see what's best for everyone." "What's best for everyone," Rosemary said, "is respecting property rights and not taking advantage of a grieving widow." "Now see here," Robert started, but Dad cut him off. "I think there's been a misunderstanding," Dad said in his calm, measured way. "This house belongs to Violet, always has. If you have a problem with that, you can take it up with a judge." "We're not looking for a legal battle," Patricia said. "We're just trying to preserve our son's memory." "Daniel's memory," Dad said, "is preserved in Violet's heart, not in real estate." That's when Patrick arrived with the eviction notice. I introduced him to everyone, and he got straight to the point. "Mr. and Mrs. Matthews, I'm Violet's attorney. I have here a formal notice requiring you to vacate the premises within 30 days. Patricia's face went white. "You can't evict us, we're family." "You're guests who have overstayed your welcome," Patrick said, "and according to Colorado law, you have 30 days to find alternative housing." "This is ridiculous," Robert said. "This house is our son's home." "No, sir," Patrick said, opening his briefcase. "I have here the property deed, the mortgage documents, and the title insurance policy. Your son had no legal ownership interest in this property. None whatsoever." He spread the documents on the kitchen table. Patricia stared at them like they were written in a foreign language. "But he lived here," she said weakly. "As Violet's husband," Patrick said. "Which gave him the right to live here but not to own it. Those are very different things." "What about his will?" Robert demanded. "The house was never his to leave," Patrick explained patiently. "You can't bequeath property you don't own." I watched the realization dawn on their faces. They'd been so convinced that being Daniel's parents gave them some sort of claim to his life, his possessions, his home. But the law didn't care about their grief or their sense of entitlement. "This is heartless," Patricia said, turning to me. "Daniel loved this house. He was happy here." "He was happy here with me," I said quietly. "And he made sure I'd be protected if anything happened to him. He knew you might do something like this." "He knew," Patricia's voice cracked. I nodded. "He told me once that if anything ever happened to him, he trusted me to handle things, even if his family made it hard." "He knew you, Patricia. He knew you'd try to erase me from his life." "That's not true," she whispered. "Isn't it?" I asked. "You've been trying to get me out of this house since the day we buried him. You've been treating me like I'm some kind of intruder instead of his wife. You've been acting like I don't matter, like I never mattered to him." "Of course you mattered," Patricia said, but her voice was hollow. "No," I said. "I was just the obstacle between you and what you thought you deserved. But Daniel didn't leave you this house because it was never his to leave. He made sure it was mine so that people like you couldn't take it away from me." The room fell silent. Then Ashley walked in from through the door where she'd apparently been listening. "Mom, Dad, what are you doing?" she asked. "Ashley, honey, we're just trying to," Patricia started. "You're trying to steal Violet's house," Ashley said flatly. "I heard everything. This is horrible." "It's not stealing," Robert said. "It's preserving Daniel's legacy." "Daniel's legacy is the wife he loved and the life they built together," Ashley said, "not a piece of property." "Mom, how can you do this to her? She just lost her husband." "We lost our son," Patricia said, "and that gives you the right to make her homeless," Ashley demanded. "Daniel would be ashamed of you." That broke something in Patricia. She started crying, but I felt no sympathy. These weren't tears of grief, they were tears of frustration because her plan had failed. "You have 30 days, I said. "After that, if you're still here, I'll have you arrested for trespassing." Violet, please, Patricia begged. We're grieving too, we just want to feel close to him. You can feel close to him anywhere, I said, but you can't feel close to him in my house at my expense. Patrick packed up his documents. The notice is served. You have 30 days from today. After he left, the house was eerily quiet. Patricia and Robert went to their room and started packing. Ashley stayed in the kitchen with me, Rosemary, and Dad. I'm so sorry, she said. I had no idea they were planning this. I thought they were just staying to help you. It's not your fault, I said. Daniel really would be ashamed, she said. He loved you so much. He used to tell me all the time how lucky he was to have found you. That made me cry for the first time since the confrontation started. Rosemary put her arm around me, and Dad squeezed my shoulder. He knew, I said through my tears. He knew they might try something like this, and he made sure I'd be protected. That's love, Dad said. Real love, the kind that thinks ahead and makes sure the people we care about are safe. Patricia and Robert left the next morning. No goodbyes, no apologies, just silent packing and a slammed door. They'd tried to manipulate me in my weakest moment. Ashley sent me a text later that day. I'm so sorry about my parents. I don't know what got into them. Daniel loved you and he would have wanted you to keep the house. I hope we can still be friends. I texted back. Of course we can. You're not responsible for their behavior. Rosemary stayed for another week, helping me go through Daniel's things and start the process of grieving without an audience. Dad came by every other day, fixing little things around the house and just being present. Over the following weeks, I learned that Patricia and Robert had been telling extended family members that I'd stolen Daniel's house and thrown them out in their grief. But Ashley had been telling the truth about what really happened, and slowly, some of the family started reaching out to me to apologize and also sympathize with me. I kept the house, I kept the memories, I kept the life Daniel and I had built together, and slowly I started to heal. The house is quiet now, but it's a peaceful quiet. Daniel's photos are still on the walls. His favorite coffee mug is still in the cabinet. His side of the bed is still covered with his pillow. But there's something else here now too, a sense of strength I didn't know I had. When Daniel put this house in my name, he wasn't just protecting my financial future. He was protecting my ability to grieve in peace, to heal in my own time, to hold on to our memories without someone else trying to claim them. They thought I was weak because I was grieving. They thought I would crumble under pressure because I was alone. But I wasn't alone. I had Rosemary, who would fight dragons for me. I had Dad, who reminded me what dignity looked like. And I had Daniel, who had loved me enough to make sure I'd never need to beg anyone for a roof over my head. Sometimes people ask me if I regret not just giving them the house to avoid the drama. But I know what Daniel would say. You don't reward bad behavior, you don't let bullies win, and you don't give up something that's yours just because someone else wants it. He was right. He was always right. And in the end, that's exactly what saved me. What would you have done in my situation? Would you have stood your ground, or would you have tried to keep the peace? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to hit that like button. And don't forget to share this video and subscribe if you haven't already. We've got more incredible revenge stories coming your way.